It was 11 o'clock in the morning. At the city's largest bank, an elderly man dressed in plain clothes walked in, holding an old envelope in his hand. The moment he entered, all the customers and employees inside the bank began to look at him with curious eyes. This old man's name was Robert Johnson. Robert carried a cane in one hand and that worn envelope in the other. Slowly, he made his way toward the customer service counter. Behind the counter sat a young employee named Emily Parker. Everyone inside the bank had their eyes fixed on Robert. As he approached, step by step, Robert reached Emily and spoke very politely. "Look, dear, there seems to be a problem with my account. It hasn't been working properly. Friends, people from many countries watch our videos. But if you believe that Allah is the creator, then please give a like to this video and let us know in the comments which country you are watching from." Saying this, Robert handed the envelope toward Emily. But Emily, glancing at his simple clothing, judged him and replied, "Sir, are you sure you've come to the right bank? I don't think your account is with us." At that moment, Robert calmly said, "Please, just check once. My account might very well be here." Emily took the envelope and said, "All right, sir, but this will take some time. You'll need to wait for a while." And with that, Emily and the other people in the bank went back to their business. Robert Johnson stood there waiting patiently. After a while, he quietly said again, "Friends, if you want to see more interesting videos like this, then subscribe to our End Moral Story channel right now. Emily, if you're too busy, maybe you could call the manager. I actually have something to discuss with him too. I haven't spoken to him yet." Reluctantly, Emily picked up the phone and called the office of Mr. David Miller, the branch manager. She informed him that an elderly man wanted to see him. From a distance, Manager Miller glanced over at Robert. Robert looked like just an ordinary old man. Over the phone, Miller asked Emily, "Is this person really one of our clients, or did he just wander in?" Emily replied, "Sir, I'm not sure, but he insists that he needs to speak with you." Miller sighed and said, "I don't have time for people like that. Just have him sit in the waiting area. After a while, he'll leave on his own." Following the manager's instructions, Emily told Robert politely, "Sir, please have a seat over there. The manager will meet with you once he's free." Robert slowly walked over to the waiting area and sat down on a chair in the corner, but everyone's eyes still followed him. In this bank, most of the customers wore sharp suits and ties. Robert, however, was dressed in simple, worn clothes. At first glance, no one would believe he had an account in this prestigious bank. After all, this was a place where the city's wealthiest people kept their money. That was why Robert became the center of attention. People whispered about him, glancing at him from time to time. Some even questioned out loud whether he belonged there at all, and those murmurs reached Robert's ears. But Robert ignored the whispers and simply waited for his turn. He thought to himself, "The manager will come eventually. I'll speak with him then." Inside the bank, there was another employee named Michael Adams, who worked in a junior position. Michael had just returned from stepping outside when he noticed an elderly man sitting quietly in the waiting area while everyone else kept staring at him and whispering. Some people were calling him a beggar. Others said, "There's no way this man has an account here. How could someone like him even get inside? Why are they letting him sit here?" Michael overheard these harsh remarks, and it troubled him deeply. He felt uncomfortable watching the way people were treating Robert. So, with respect, he walked straight over to the old man and gently asked, "Sir, why are you here? Do you need help with something?" Robert looked up at him and softly replied, "I need to meet with the manager. I have some important business with him." Hearing this, Michael nodded and said, "All right, sir. Please wait here for a moment. I'll speak to the manager right away." Michael then went to Manager David Miller's office and mentioned the elderly man in the waiting area. But Miller was already aware of Robert and immediately responded, "Yes, I know. I'm the one who told him to sit there. Let him wait a little longer. I don't have time for him right now. Just let him sit there for a while, then he'll leave." Manager David Miller told Michael firmly. Then he added, "Go back to your work. This matter doesn't concern you." Hearing this, Michael reluctantly returned to his tasks, though he still felt uneasy. Meanwhile, Robert Johnson sat patiently in the waiting area for nearly an hour. He remained calm, even as time dragged on. But after an hour of waiting, his patience began to run out. Slowly, he stood up, gripping his cane, and walked toward the manager's office. Seeing him approach, Manager Miller quickly stepped out of his office, blocking his path, and asked in a sharp, condescending tone, "Yes, sir. What exactly do you need?" Robert held out the old envelope and began speaking politely. "Please take a look at this. Inside is the paperwork for my bank account. For some reason, transactions haven't been going through. Could you check and tell me what the problem is?" Manager Miller glanced at the envelope and smirked slightly. After a pause, he said, "Well, when an account has no money in it, this is exactly what happens. I'm guessing you haven't deposited anything, which is why your transactions are blocked." Robert, still calm and respectful, softly replied, "Please, just check my account once, and then tell me." Robert looked at the manager and said calmly, "Wouldn't it be better if you actually checked before making such claims? How can you speak like this without looking?" Manager David Miller laughed smugly and replied, "Sir, this is years of experience speaking. I've been in this job a long time. I can tell what kind of person someone is just by their appearance, and I can tell you your account shows nothing. It's clear to me you don't have any money here. I think it's best you leave now. Everyone is staring at you, and this is becoming a scene." The entire bank had grown tense. Customers kept their eyes fixed on Robert. Robert then gently placed the old envelope on the manager's desk and said, "All right, I'll leave, but at least take a look at what's written inside this envelope." With that, Robert turned toward the door. As he reached the entrance, he suddenly looked back and said softly, "For treating people this way, you will face very harsh consequences." Then Robert walked out of the bank, leaning on his cane, disappearing into the busy street. Manager Miller, hearing those words, felt a small pang of unease, but he quickly brushed it off, muttering to himself, "Old men say things like that all the time. Nothing will happen." Back at the counter, the envelope still lay on his desk. At that moment, Michael Adams picked it up, curious. He logged into the bank's server and carefully entered the account details written inside. As he dug into the older records, his eyes widened in shock. The man who had just left Robert Johnson wasn't just any customer. He was, in fact, a major stakeholder in the bank, owning 60% of its shares. Michael read the documents again, his hands trembling. To be absolutely sure, there was no doubt. The quiet old man everyone had mocked was essentially the bank's owner. Without wasting time, Michael printed a copy of the records and rushed toward the manager's office. Inside, Manager Miller was busy entertaining a wealthy client, speaking with charm and authority, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. Manager David Miller was busy explaining different investment schemes to a wealthy client seated in his office. Just then, Michael Adams walked in. Miller frowned and, with a quick hand gesture, asked him silently, "Why are you here?" Michael, also using gestures, indicated that the file he carried contained the report about the elderly man Miller had dismissed earlier. He carefully placed the document on the manager's desk and whispered, "Sir, this is that man's account information. Please, you should really take a look at it." But Miller barely glanced at the papers. With a dismissive smile, he turned back to his client and said, "Michael, we don't have time for people like him. Don't bother me with such nonsense." Michael, still respectful, leaned closer and said softly, "Sir, I really think you should review this once. It's important." Annoyed, Miller shoved the report back toward Michael and said firmly, "I told you, I'm not interested in clients like that. Take it away." Left with no choice, Michael walked out quietly, holding the file in his hand. The atmosphere inside the bank soon calmed down again, and everyone returned to their work. The incident seemed forgotten. But the next morning, at exactly the same time, Robert Johnson returned. This time, however, he was not alone. Walking beside him was a sharp-looking man in a well-tailored suit, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. As they entered the bank together, All eyes once again turned toward Robert. But now, with the suited man by his side, the entire room fell into a tense silence. Customers, employees, even the security guard by the door all watched closely, wondering who this old man truly was. The moment Robert Johnson and the suited man entered, they immediately drew everyone's attention. Robert calmly raised his hand and motioned for manager David Miller to come forward. Nervously, Miller stepped out of his office and stood before Robert. Robert looked him in the eye and said in a steady voice, "Mr. Miller, didn't I tell you yesterday that your actions would bring heavy consequences? The way you treated me was unacceptable. Now, it's time for you to face the results." Miller froze, shocked by Robert's tone, but then forced a smirk and thought, "What can this old man possibly do to me? What kind of punishment could he give?" Robert's voice grew firm. "You are being removed from your position as manager. From now on, Michael Adams will take your place as the new branch manager. You will be reassigned to field duties." Miller's eyes widened in disbelief. He stammered, Who are you to have me removed like this? What gives you that authority?" Robert leaned forward slightly and said with calm authority, "Consider me one of the true owners of this bank. 60% of the shares belong to me. If I wish, I can replace you today, and that is exactly what I'm doing." At that revelation, a gasp swept through the bank. Employees froze. Customers who had been present both today and the day before stared wide-eyed at Robert. Whispers spread like wildfire. "The old man owns the bank." The suited man beside Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out official documents. One was a promotion letter officially appointing Michael Adams as the new branch manager. Another was addressed to David Miller, reassigning him to field duties and making it clear he could no longer serve as manager. Seeing the documents, sweat trickled down Miller's forehead. He felt the weight of humiliation crush him. Desperate, he turned to Robert and stammered, "Please, sir, forgive me for yesterday. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I deeply apologize." But Robert raised his hand, stopping him. His voice was calm yet cutting. "Why should I accept your apology now? Respect should not depend on a person's clothes or appearance. Yesterday you judged me by what I wore, not by who I was. That mistake has cost you your position." The entire bank fell silent. Every eye was on Robert, once dismissed as a poor old man, now revealed as the true power behind the institution. Robert Johnson's voice rang with authority across the silent bank lobby. "I will not forgive you for how you treated me yesterday. What you did goes directly against the core values of this bank. This institution was founded on the principle that there should be no distinction between rich and poor, that every customer deserves equal respect. And yet, you judged me by my appearance." He paused, his eyes fixed on David Miller. "I was merciful today by allowing you to stay in employment at all. Otherwise, I could have had you terminated on the spot. But let this be clear, the way you treated me should never be repeated with anyone. Not with a rich client, not with a poor one, not with anyone who walks through these doors." Robert then turned toward the employees and pointed to Michael Adams. This young man, though he had very little, still came forward with kindness and respect. He treated me with dignity when no one else did. That is the type of character this bank needs in leadership. That is why he is now the rightful branch manager, so that he can lead by example, treating people not by their clothes, but by their humanity. Then Robert called over Karen White, the teller who had first dismissed him. His voice softened slightly, but his words carried weight. "Karen, yesterday you judged me the moment I handed you that envelope. You assumed I didn't belong here. I will forgive you this once. But remember, your job is to serve customers with fairness, not to size them up by appearance. From today forward, no customer will be judged by what they wear. You must look beyond the surface and understand who you are dealing with." The bank floor was utterly silent. Employees stood stiff. Customers stared in awe, and David Miller lowered his head in shame. Robert Johnson then looked around the entire branch. This bank was built not just with money, but with values, and if those values are broken, then this institution is worth nothing. Let this day be a reminder to respect every customer equally, for without them, there is no bank. If you had handled me properly today, I wouldn't have had to face the manager. And I wouldn't have been humiliated, Robert added firmly, his eyes scanning the room. Emily Parker, the teller who had first doubted him, clasped her hands together and spoke with genuine remorse. Mr. Johnson, please forgive me. I made a huge mistake. I promise this will never happen again. Robert nodded slightly and then addressed the entire staff, his voice calm but authoritative. You all have much to learn from Michael Adams. Watch him, learn from him, and strive to treat every customer with the dignity they deserve. I will occasionally have someone check in and report back to me about your conduct, so be mindful. Your actions will always be noticed. With that, Robert and his companion slowly walked out of the bank. As the doors closed behind them, the staff and customers began discussing what had just happened. A quiet resolve spread through the branch: work properly, respect every client, and take responsibility or face consequences. The bank transformed almost overnight. Employees began assisting customers sincerely, treating everyone fairly regardless of appearance or wealth. Word of Robert Johnson's actions spread quickly throughout the city, and people began praising the institution. If you own a bank, this is how it should be run. Most owners leave it all to managers, ignoring how employees behave, but Robert Johnson showed what it truly means to lead. He cares about people, not just profits. And in that moment, the lesson was clear to everyone. True leadership is measured not by wealth, but by integrity, fairness, and respect for every human being. Fulfilled his responsibilities completely and gave the bank employees a valuable lesson. So friends, that was our video for today. Let us know in the comments how you liked it. Friends, these stories are not from the Quran or Hadith. They are based on real-life events in our society and are illustrated using Quranic and Hadith teachings to show how such situations can be resolved. Please tell us in the comments which country you are watching this video from. If you want to see more Islamic stories and educational videos like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And moral stories right now. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, may Almighty Allah grant us all the guidance to stay on the right path. Ameen, summa ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.